Okay, let's take a look at some of the core components available to us in React Native. So if you go to the components section, you'll see this list of components, and the two default ones within the default app are view and text. So view is a fundamental component for building UI. I like to think of views as divs. So you can have multiple divs, you can nest them, you can add styles to them, and I usually make use of them to wrap other elements. The other component that comes with the default app is text, which is pretty self-explanatory. If you want to render text on the screen, you have to make use of this component. So if we go into our app, you'll see the view here, which has a style on it, and we have a nested text component here. We also have this status bar, which we won't take a look at here, so let me just remove it. And also note that I renamed app.js to JSX, just because it has better support for Emmet, and I also added this prettier RC file, so I have prettier installed. So let me just save that. Let me hide this since we're mostly working in the app.jsx file. So for styling, you have to make use of this CSS and JS syntax. As you can see, this view has a styles.container object, which is defined down here. And for the CSS properties, since we're within an object, you have to define them in camel case. So as you can see, these properties, background color, align items, and justify content are all defined in camel case. You can also define inline styles. So if I were to style this text using an inline style, you can just add an object in here. So let's just say color red. Cool. Now in React Native, you don't have access to all of the CSS properties that are within the browser. So just make use of your IDE to see what's available. So for example, everything in React Native is a flex container. So if I were to try the display property here, you'll see that the only two options are flex and none. So yeah, just make use of your IDE and it's autocomplete. I'm using VS Code here and it's pretty good. So like I said, everything is a flex container and the default direction is column, so top to bottom. So that would make justify content, center it top to bottom. So if I were to remove this, then you can see it's at the top now. Also, another thing is you have to make use of numbers instead of pixel values. So for example, margin top, you wouldn't add a pixel value, just add a number here. So let's say 60, and that should work if I were to spell it correctly. Cool. So we'll have a lot of practice with styling and CSS as we are going to style every screen that you saw in the demo app. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the other components. Let's start with a button here. Pretty self-explanatory. So let's take a look at the example here. So for the button components specifically, they render differently on iOS and Android and use the OS default styles. So this is how it looks on Android. Even though web is selected, it's similar to how Android looks. And on iOS, it's just colored text. So let's take a look at one of the examples here. Let's just grab this and paste it into our code. Let's put it underneath the text here. So we have a title and an on-press listener. And here's another component here if you want to make use of a generic alert. So similar to alerts in JavaScript in the browser, you can make use of this alert component. So let me import alert. So it's this one here. And let me also import button. Okay. And now you'll see that button appear here. Like I said, in iOS, it's just colored text. And there is the alert. So there should be some customization. For example, the color of the text. So if you scroll down here, you'll see that color changes the text on iOS, but the background color in Android. So again, let's just change it here. Let's just say red here. And you'll see that the button is now red. So for buttons, you cannot override the style. But if you do want buttons that are customizable in terms of style, then we have a few options here. The first option is touchable opacity, which I'll be making use of a lot throughout the series. And it's basically just a button that you can style. So let's take a look at the example here. Let's put it underneath our button. Let's make sure to import it. And we also have this text here to render the text within the button. And it looks like there's also some styles. So let's grab the styles. It's right here. Just centering the text and giving it a background color. So let's add that underneath our container. And it also has this on-press handler. You can do it inline like this, but in this case, let's just add a function up here on press. Let's say alert again, dot alert, touchable opacity pressed. Okay. And there it is there. And you can see it's styled. And this should render the same on iOS and Android. Just make sure to test on both devices. So since we have full customization here, you can do whatever you like in terms of styles. For example, if you wanted to add an icon next to the button here, you can do that. You just have to add the flex direction. Remember I told you flex direction is column by default. So let's change that to row. So it's next to each other, row. And then we just have to add another flex item to the button here, or the touchable opacity. So let's just say this was the icon and it's right next to it. So in terms of icons, we have a few options. If you want to go the custom route and use an SVG, let's look for that actually. I think that's within Expo. We have to install a package to make use of SVGs. Let's see. Yeah, we have to install this React Native SVG library. So let's go ahead and install this and make use of an SVG. So let me stop this. Expo install this. And let's start up our server again. Okay, let me just reload the app. Okay, now that's installed, we can make use of any SVG that we want. So let me just grab one from Laracasts. Let's just grab, say, doesn't matter actually, let me just grab one of them here. There is an option for JSX here, but I'm just going to copy the SVG code. And then we can make use of this tool here. Where is it? Right here, React SVGR, to convert it correctly. So let's just paste in the SVG here. And then we can make use of it in our React Native project like this. So I'm actually just going to copy this and put it in an external file. So let me just go back here. Let me just open up the sidebar. I'm just going to put it here. New file, let's say icon settings.jsx. Paste that in. Let's go ahead and import this. Actually, let's just use it here. Icon settings. Okay. And let's make sure to import that. Will this work? There it is. That should have imported it. It did not, so let me just do it manually. Import icon settings from icon settings. Okay. Sorry, should be /. And we have to change the function name as well, icon settings. That's why it wasn't recognizing it in my autocomplete. And one more name change down here. Hopefully this works. So yeah, that's not rendering correctly because I think we have to add a width and a height. So let's say 16 and height of 16. And let's try that out. And there is the icon. And I think it's rendering the full height of the screen because we have this flex 1. So let me just comment that out. And reload. And the button is the same height. Okay. So yeah, you can make use of any custom SVG, or the easier way is just to make use of the icon pack that Expo has available. So go back into Expo. Let's look for icons here. And we have this set of icons that we can use at this link. And it has a whole bunch of icon packs within it. So just search for your icon here. And you can see a few of the icon packs here. So pretty straightforward to use. Let's just grab this one here from Ion Icons. So you can copy the import and copy the actual component. So let's try this out. Let's put it here. Okay, grab this, and let's replace our custom icon here. Where is it? Icon settings. Let's just comment this out and put in this one. And there it is. Cool. So yeah, this icon pack is pretty extensive. We'll probably be making use of this throughout the series. Now, if you need other features for your buttons like long press, then you probably want to make use of the Pressable button instead of the Touchable Opacity. So if you scroll down, you'll see some of the options it has available. You can listen for things like on press in. So it's kind of like key down for the keyboard in the browser, but for the button, you can listen for press out, and you can also listen for long press. So let's take a look at an example here. Let's just add it to our code manually, as this one has too many options. So let's just say Pressable underneath our touchable opacity. Pressable, okay. And let's share the style with our button. So we can say styles.button. And let's also grab the text component here. And let's put it here. Let's say Pressable, okay. And let's take one of those events. So let's say on press in. Let's do both actually, on press in and on press out. So I'm just going to add them inline here. So let me say on press in equals, and for now we'll just console log something. Pressing in, let me duplicate this for press out. Pressing out. And let's add one for long press as well. So that one is on long press. So let me duplicate this. On long press. Long press. Okay, let's try this out. Make sure to import Pressable. Okay, there it is. So let me just wrap this in a view. Like I said, I make views to wrap other components. I wrapped it in the wrong place. Should be around this whole thing. So let's try that again. View. And we can add a style to this. Style equals margin top, say 20. Okay. So I'm going to bring up the console. This is usually how I debug. And you can see any console logs appear here. So there's press in and press out. So let me just hold my mouse button here. You'll see only press in. And also long press after 400 milliseconds, I believe. And there's press out. So yeah, if you need more control for your buttons, definitely make use of the Pressable component instead of touchable opacity. Actually, there's one more feature here called the hit rectangle. You can react to button presses in this pink area as well. So let me try that out. I'm going to make the margin bigger here, so it's not close to the other button. And to add that extra touch area, we can use the hit slop prop and give it a number. So let's say 20. And now we should be able to press this button outside of this, or outside of what you see here. So you'll see I'm going to press it right here. And you'll see it still reacts to those clicks, or those presses in this case. So yeah, definitely make use of this component if you need more control. Okay, let's take a look at TextInput, which is the equivalent of input type equals text in the browser. So let's just grab this here, this TextInput. Let's try this out in our application here. Let's put it underneath this view. Actually, I'll make another view here. Paste that in. Let's make sure to import TextInput. Okay, so let's add the styles first. The ones that are here. It's called input. So I'm just going to copy and paste this into our styles. Okay, and we have to add a piece of state for our text. So it's called text here, and I'm going to change this to set text. So let's add text and set text to our state. So let's just say const text set text, and we'll make use of useState here. useState, and let's set it to an empty string by default. And now as we update our text, this text or this piece of state should be updated as well. Let me just change the width on this text input here. Let me just say width 300. Okay. And it does work. Cool. Let me just add a text component here underneath, so you can see the input binding working. So we'll say text, and we'll say text here. Okay. There we go. You can see a change here. Change here. So this is generally how you would work with forms. You'd have a submit button here, and you would submit any form inputs that have changed. Okay, now let's take a look at a FlatList, which is a common component you'll use when you're rendering lists. We'll be making use of a FlatList a lot in our app since we have a list of tweets, or for the demo app, I mean. But for now, let's just take a look at the example that's here. So we have a list of data here. In this case, it's just hard-coded. We have an ID and a title. So let's grab this. Let's put this into our app. And quick side note, for all of these examples, you can just make use of Expo to try it out in your phone. just go to my device here, and then you can scan the QR code, and then it will run in the Expo Go app. So back to our app, let's just paste this data in. Let's put it right here, or underneath the text. Okay. And let's grab the FlatList component here, right here. Okay. Let's put it underneath our view here. Actually, let's make another one. Okay. So the data it's rendering is this array of data we just pasted in. The render item is how each item renders, which we'll add in a second. And the key extractor is the unique ID. So let's add this render item method. So it's right here. And you can see it's making use of this item component in here. But I'm just going to do it directly in the render item method, which I will paste here. So instead of using the item component, we'll just define our own in here. So let's get rid of this. Let's just say view, and then within view we'll have text. So in this case, we just want to render the title. So item.title. Okay. Does that render? We have to import FlatList. FlatList. Let's import this from React Native. Try that again. And there is our list. So yeah, pretty simple example, but a FlatList has support for multiple features like pull to refresh. You can detect when it's at the end of the list, and it has performance features as well. For example, if you have a long list, it frees up memory by not rendering the ones that are not visible within the list. Let's actually modify this FlatList to pull in data from an external API. So I'm going to make use of the Reddit API here. If you're not familiar with the Reddit API, just go to any subreddit. Let's go to aw. And if you add .json to the end, you'll get a list of the posts in JSON format. And I have this plugin here, which allows you to highlight it. So let's quickly do this with a FlatList, and I'll just make use of fetch here. So we have to add a new piece of state to hold the results from the server. So let's do that. Let's add one called results. And we'll say set results. And it will be null by default, or an empty array actually. Okay. So let's change our FlatList data array to results. Okay. That should be empty. Now let's go into our use effect hook, which will run when the screen renders. And this is where we'll make our network request. So we'll put it here, use effect. And let's make sure to import that as well. Okay. We don't need this return. And we want it to run when the screen renders. And let's just do it directly in here. So we'll make use of fetch. We'll grab that endpoint. So it's reddit.com/r/aw.json. We have to do .then response. We have to change it to JSON. And then let's say results from server. And we're going to set results. And the key I'm interested in, I already know. So I already inspected this data coming back here. And what we're interested in is the results from server.data.children. Okay. So children are all of the posts. As you can see, it's an array here. And now in our render item method, we can change this to item.data.title. Again, if you look here, this is, or one of these is the item. We have data and we have a title somewhere here. And there you can see the title. So if I did this correctly and save, hopefully this pulls from the Reddit API, and it does. Cool. So again, you can style this however you like. If you want to add some padding here or some margin, we can do that here. Let's just say margin top. Let's just say 10. Cool. And let's also put some padding on the actual FlatList. FlatList. Let's just add another inline style here. Or let's add margin. So I'll say margin. You can say margin horizontal and vertical. Sorry, I want an inline style here. And you can make use of margin horizontal and vertical. So it's both on the left and the right. And let's just say 10. Maybe more, 20. And that looks good to me for now. And we can scroll through this list here. Cool. So yeah, that was just a quick demo of some of the common components we'll be using when we're building out our React Native app. Again, we'll make use of a lot of these components and more as we build out our Twitter clone application.